Hi, my name is Kaylani, and today I will be going over my Popplet on the cognitive development theory and zone of proximal development. So first we'll start with the cognitive development theory. The cognitive development theory was developed by Jean Piaget in 1936. It posits that children make sense of the world around them by developing through biological maturation and environmental experience. So essentially, this theory asserts that children were born with a basic mental structure that they inherited from their parents, and then all subsequent learning grows from that foundation. So Piaget described his work as genetic epistemology. This was because his goal was to discover the origins of how children processed and formed ideas about fundamental concepts, such as numbers, justice, causality, and so on. At the time, his theory was different from other developmental theories for a couple of reasons. One is that his developmental theory focused solely on children. So adults, no, just children. Secondly, his theory focuses more on development as opposed to an explicit explanation of how children learn. And lastly, his theory posits that children go through discrete stages of development that are distinguished by qualitative differences. So, to get more into that, in this theory, cognitive development is a process by which a child reorganizes information and compares what they already know to information that they are receiving. So in this sense, we're going to go over some key words. The first key word is a schema. So a schema or schemata, schemas, grammar. A schema is a unit of knowledge that organizes generalized information about aspects in the world. So as children develop, they develop more schemata about the world, and the complexity of these schema increases. So, for example, newborn babies have innate reflex-based schemata, such as sucking something that touches their mouth, grasping something that touches their hands, and turning towards something that touches their cheek. Those are natural-born schemata. As children age, they develop scripts, which are more complex sequence-based schemata. For example, like how to order food at a restaurant. As a child grows up, they'll start to learn that it's not just ordering food, that it's looking at a menu, ordering your food, getting the bill, paying the bill, and so on. Related to schemas is this idea of equilibration. So equilibration moves development along, and how children will develop is that they will either learn through assimilation or accommodation. So assimilation is when a child uses an existing schema to make sense of new information. For example, say a child sees an animal in a canyon with scruffy fur, 4 legs, and a tail, and then shouts, "Doggy!" This child is using what they already know and assimilating information into that schema. Now, accommodation is when you alter a schema when you encounter information that does not match your existing knowledge. So in the child example, the child's mother explains that the animal is not a doggy. It is actually a coyote. The mother teaches the child that coyotes are related to dogs, but they're different because they're meaner, they growl more, and they have much sharper teeth. So in this instance, the child had to accommodate their knowledge with this new experience. And now they have 2 different schemas, a more specific schema for what a dog is, and a schema for what a coyote is, and how those 2 animals are similar and different. So between assimilation and accommodation, the goal here is equilibrium. The equilibrium is when a child can use assimilation to properly explain the information they are perceiving. In our previous example, the child was not under a state of equilibrium, because when they used the information they knew, that information turned out to be incorrect. In this sense, they might have experienced disequilibrium when their mother told them, "No, that's not a dog." Disequilibrium is the discomfort caused by the inability to assimilate. Children address this discomfort through accommodation, and thus their development continues. So, this feeling of discomfort that the child would feel because they misidentify the animal as a dog, they would alleviate that discomfort by understanding a new schema for the animal coyote. Moving on. In the cognitive development theory, Piaget suggested that there are 4 main stages of development. Every child experiences these stages in order, but age is generally relative, and some children may get stuck in a stage. Let's go over the first stage. The first stage is the sensory motor stage, which is generally from birth to 2 years old. In this stage, children develop their motor skills and experience the world through their senses. A special skill that they learn in this stage is object permanence, which is the idea and the understanding that an object still exists even when hidden. That's why peekaboo is so entertaining to young children. They genuinely question where you go when you cover your hands and your face. The next stage is the pre-operational stage, and this is from 2 years old to 7 years old. In this stage, children begin to think symbolically and represent things with words and images. A special characteristic of this stage is that children are generally egocentric in their thinking, which means they have difficulty understanding other people's perspectives. The third stage is the concrete operational stage from ages 7 to 11. In this stage, children begin to think logically and can understand concrete ideas. A special skill they learn in this stage is the idea of conservation, which is that quantity stays the same even if appearance changes. So 5 ounces of water in a tall cup is still 5 ounces of water when poured into a small cup. And lastly is the formal operational stage, which is 11 years old to adolescence and adulthood. Here, children begin to think abstractly and can test hypotheses. Moving along. So what are the educational implications of Piaget's cognitive development theory? Well, Piaget's theories have helped guide educational policy and teaching practices. Curriculum tries to focus on the skills a child should acquire by a certain age or stage and allows children to have experiences that will help guide their learning. This is very important to the concept of readiness, which claims that children should not be pushed to learn a task that they are not developmentally or cognitively ready for. For example, you wouldn't want to teach a 3-month-old infant to walk. They're not developmentally ready to do that. A second educational implication is this concept of discovery learning, which is the idea that children learn best by doing. Active discovery through pretend play, individuality in curriculum will allow children to have a more meaningful learning experience. This stems the belief that children must be active listeners in order to engage in assimilation and accommodation. Problem-solving skills must be discovered, not taught. And a final educational implication is the idea that the teacher's role is to facilitate, not to dictate or direct. In this sense, teachers should encourage the process, not just the end goal. Teachers should use both collaborative activities and individual activities so that kids can learn from one another. Teachers should use methods that allow children to rediscover and reconstruct the truth. Also, teachers should devise situations that cause disequilibrium. This allows the child to think critically about their world and to adjust their ways of thinking accordingly. And lastly, teachers should evaluate the level of a child's development so that suitable tasks are given to them. All in all, that is Piaget's cognitive development theory. Now we will move on to the zone of proximal development. So, the idea of zone of proximal development, ZPD for short, was developed by Vygotsky in 1978. So ZPD refers to the distance between what a child can accomplish on their own and what they can accomplish with adult guidance or help from peers. Vygotsky suggested that interactions with peers is beneficial for learning since students with beginner knowledge can learn from more skilled peers. So, when a student is in the ZPD for a particular task, extra guidance will assist them in achieving their goal. For example, imagine that a student is learning how to perform two-digit addition. The teacher notices that the student struggles when they have to carry a number from the 1 slot to the 10 slot. But when the student doesn't have to carry, they are successful. The teacher guides the student by helping them use manipulatives to represent addition. With more practice, the student is eventually able to add without the need of assistance. So, a couple of things to take away from this example. One is the idea of the line of natural regression. The line of natural regression is when the assistance is taken away. That's the idea that the student will be more capable than how they were originally. However, they will still not be 100% comfortable with doing the task on their own. So with the student doing addition, without the aid of manipulatives, the student may still get a couple answers wrong on their worksheet. However, they were originally better off than how they were. Also, the term scaffolding comes into play. Scaffolding is a term introduced by Wood et al. In the year 1976, and it is a process by which a student works to achieve a goal through the gradual shedding of assistance. So, say the student has the teacher there with them to help and has the manipulatives. Then the teacher sees, hey, the student's doing pretty well. I'm going to step back. The student now just has manipulatives. And then the student or the teacher observes that the student is able to just do the addition, doesn't even need the manipulatives. Manipulatives are taken away. That's the idea of scaffolding. That the gradual shedding of assistance will help gauge and guide the student into independence. Then we have the idea of cultural tools, which are the types of assistance that different cultures can provide to learners. So in this example, the teacher is a cultural tool. The manipulatives that the teacher was able to give the child were a cultural tool. Other examples are TV, the internet, YouTube, podcasts, books, etc. Anything that someone can provide to a learner. And lastly, in this example, the teacher is considered a more knowledgeable other. That's pretty self-explanatory. A more knowledgeable other is someone or something that has a higher competency at achieving or performing a task. So, 2 studies that support the concepts of ZPD and scaffolding. One is Wood and Middleton in 1975. Their experiment observed how mothers interacted with their children while they built a 3D model. The mothers in different groups gave different types of support, such as general encouragement, specific instructions, or direct demonstration. The result of this study was that no one type of support was the best. What did work the best was when mothers tailored the type of support they gave to how well this child was doing. If the child was doing well, then the mother would give encouragement. When the child struggled, the mother would provide more specific support to help the child along. In this sense, assistance is most effective when it is tailored to the learner's needs. A second study is Freund with the dollhouse study. She wanted to test which was more effective, Piaget's discovery learning or ZPD. She assessed children's initial performance at a furniture arranging task. She placed them into 2 groups, either where they learned alone or they learned with the assistance of their mom. And then they were given a final assessment that was more complex. The result is that children who were assisted with their mother performed better. However, I have a few questions in that. For example, did they do better in the long run or just better in that moment of time? And lastly, educational applications. There are many. The ZPD has influenced guidelines for scaffolding, has supported collaborative learning, reciprocal teaching, and knowledge through social interaction. I hope you learned a lot from my presentation. Thank you!